Yeah, I'm Bob Schwinn, Building 503. I think the presenters have done a tremendous job here. The project looks like it's first class. My question is, how can we be assured that we have the management and staffing to provide for a first class facility like this? You know, right now we have no weekend coverage, and we don't have any availability during lunch hour. So I think we need to improve on that and assure our owners that there's 24/7 service, not have to call the fire department on a weekend to get somebody trapped in an elevator out. So that's my major concern. Well, the other part looks great to me.
There are a number of things in the works. Dana has been engaged to assist us with our website and communications as an example. So she will be doing beyond this project to be with us to help develop that. The office is feeling very pressed in terms of staffing as it is now, regardless of what else we need. I can see adding a part-time person at least during the season to maybe help with clubhouse arrangements, social events, that type of thing. The social committee is well taxed. The maintenance will increase, and we're proving by maybe half a person that we need to take care of that facility. However, when it gets into professional services such as water aerobics, or someone hosting a yoga class, or physical therapists, those would be on a cost basis. We're not looking to open this up to having a staff of 15 people. We think that the ability to do that is very practical, and although we may need somebody to manage that process, it would be a shared cost basis. If that answers the question.
Well, actually, that's not quite the same thing. I see for the professional, yoga teacher, that's extension, but it's like during the time when you have a problem with your elevator number, that you need another person there, at least someone to call during that time period, and then during the time maybe we have after a storm or we have some outage, it'd be good to have the service so that people can call in and make sure people coming in can get into the condo. This was done down in Naples Beach Club. I know they had someone there, even through the holidays, over the Christmas holidays, just so people could get, someone into the building was necessary. So that's I think what you're saying.
Very good point, and I'm sorry I didn't address that. Should be a totally separate issue from this program. That's something that has come up to the board numerous times, and we kind of ignore that, primarily from a cost standpoint. The point's well made that will be on the list as something that we really look an overall enhancement of the quality of what we have.
Norm Hagforce, Building 8302. A couple of questions. One, we're going to have this assessment. Can this be added to the basis of our condo cost?
Good question. No answer.
Very good question, and yes, no answer. I'm sorry, that really has, but we will follow up with the attorney.
I've got a couple other quick questions. One, you talked about the pool. We see the length as 75 feet. What is the width of it?
It ranges between 19 feet and 16 and a half at the steps on the ends. But we may be tweaking that slightly for that second lane.
The reason I ask is I think the pool probably is most used by the kids, and they require a little bit extra space. And if you've got space for 2 swimmers going down using a good part of the pool, how much is left for the family to use?
Good question, and I think the swimmers that we've talked to tend to see that as maybe a morning activity, more kind of an exercise time, and then like during the main portions of the day, poolside use and sunning and kind of resort use, it may be more for leisure. you know.
So is it possible to make it wider?
We're definitely gonna be tweaking it because we wanna try to get that second lane, or just more space in general in the pool.
Compared to the present pool.
It is, 20 by 40 is the current pool, the largest pool out here, so it's significantly larger than that. And the area where kids may congregate, by having the two sets of steps and a long linear seat and little shallower spaces in general, will lend that whole western edge, which isn't the lap area, still be, you know, significantly larger than, it would accommodate a lot of kids playing.
We're meeting after this meeting, and I'm at 25 feet to 19. I'm at 25 feet to 19. We're gonna have a discussion about that and see what can be done to come up with more of a compromise, a little wider.
And the third quick question is, the area that's probably been used a great deal by the condo members has been the screened area for activities, and the way you have it set up there, it gets walled off from the lanai. It seems to me that if it were designed so that it opened up to the lanai, you could expand its use and have much greater flexibility in how it's used. And along with that, I would hope that you put storm shutters all the way around that screened area and around the lanai so that in inclement weather we can use it.
Yes, the screened area, the wall that you're mentioning, that is that shear wall that I mentioned earlier. We're unable to edit or touch that. That's kind of a balance point for the existing structure. So the screened area currently is in this area. The only part we've taken away to reduce the size is some storage area. And there's some discussion about, or some commentary that we've gotten about, you know, the lanai area is much larger than you have now, currently designed and shown as unscreened. And then you have the screened area off of it. That may change through the discussion, and there's, you know, a lot of the projects we're doing have roll screens, you know, and some of this area might be better served to be screened if that's important. I unfortunately haven't gotten to spend a lot of time near the beach, but it's beautiful to look at. So if the bugs are a problem, that might be a better idea to make the screened area larger by reducing some of the unscreened area. Maybe you could move the storage area. Possible too. From what we've been told from your managers, there's a large need for storage down there, and a desire for other beach toys, boats, kayaks, and things like that.
One of the issues we had during the hurricane season was what to do with the furniture that was around the pool. We're lacking storage. The recommendation is you throw the furniture in the pool and then fish it out after the storm. The storage area is actually looking to be expanded well beyond what you see on the site. One of the recommendations that came up with large parties or groups is that we provide some type of shuttle service. And the possibility the storage would be expanded to potentially, long-term, include room for, 2 carts that hold 6 people plus a driver, or 7 people plus a driver. That could be a shuttle service. We need to evaluate what the usage is and what the problems are after the facility is being built. But that's not, the storage is not an afterthought. That needs to be done now. I think the idea of possibly expanding the screened area into the open lanai or whatever the lower level might be is a good idea. I also think many of the social events would probably move up to the 3rd level to take advantage of the sunset. And the functions on that lower level would not necessarily have screened in area. The thought is good though in terms of shutters for weather protection and that, so we'll talk through some of that. Thank you.
Steve McCracken, Building 5. Excellent, Tom, really excellent job and presentation. My question concerns the hurdle to get the project approved, the 67% of the vote. I would like to know what is being done to ensure a maximum, if not 100%, at least a high number of votes to ensure the success of the project.
Susan and Terry are both involved.
Yeah, we are actively forming groups in every building and making lists of those that we know are in favor of then another column that are questionable. And then there are probably people that have already said, I'm not going to vote for this. So we're identifying the three categories. And we're going to go and knock on doors, make sure that they have all the documents, up-to-date documents that they need, not trying to twist arms, but to make sure that they have the facts available. And I think that's about all we can do, building by building. And Susan can add to that.
Okay, we have three, in every building, we have 2 ambassadors, at least. And those people are going to do what Terry just said. In addition, we have people who are renting their condos and they're off-site. Those people will be contacted by phone, and also they'll receive a folder. And we're updating the website so that they'll get today's presentation and all the information we can get to them. But a personal phone call to every one of those people. And in addition to those people who may not rent their place, but just don't come very often and may not know what's going on, those people will get a personal phone call and one of the updated folders. So we're doing everything we can.
The real bottom line here is those of you that are in favor of this project, talk it up. I mean, if you're in areas where folks are giving misinformation, you're the folks that have the information, and if you can set the record straight, that will be most helpful.
If you call a neighbor, if you have someone that isn't here very often, and you think may not understand the program or may not look at the emails, the e-blasts, we've improved that with Dana and getting information on our website. We're providing links so that people can understand what the program is. But historically, we have a very high percentage of people that just don't vote. They're not involved. They're not engaged in the process. We need to turn that around. The last point is we've considered one more town hall meeting the week of Easter. You don't need to attend if you've been to these. It would be the same presentation, but it's really to try to get those people that may be the Christmas, Easter visitors that come in for a week or two with the family and attempt to get to those people.
Thank you very much. I'd also like to add that I am very pleased with the wonderful job that all of you have done. I know you've spent hours and days and weeks and years now. I'm Maddie Wolf, and I'm in Building 3. I have been around since the beginning. One of my questions, now that if this goes through, we would have a fire pit. It would be more of an interesting place to use in the evening. Right now, there are specific hours that the whirlpool cannot be used, and the security comes around to check to make sure nobody is in there. So have you thought about restrictive hours for the place in the evening? A fire pit to me is to be used in the evening, and it would bring people in there at night. That also means maybe younger people want to come in, and they're going to be in the pool. And that was the problem that we had in the past. Not so much with the owners, but with their guests coming in.
There are several things that, apart from this project, the board, upon approval and some additional input, and we're talking more surveys at some point, the board would establish rules and regs for the building, for the usage as we currently have. I'm in favor of opening the pool to dusk, but that's not necessarily what's going to happen. I'm sorry, to 9 o'clock instead of dusk. The limitation on the number of people using the facility for a particular function. Someone wants to have a wedding on the beach. Well, you're bringing in outsiders. That may be a group of 35, 40 people would be the max. Otherwise, you don't have the function. Those types of things have to be better defined, presented at a meeting, open up getting conversation or communication back from you, and then dealing with that appropriately.
I'm Leon Klein. I'm in Building 5, Unit 201. I know that we don't need additional parking now. You're really trying to increase the volume of usage of the club. I can't see that going on. Eventually, some board isn't going to say we need additional parking. Along with that, Terry mentioned a couple of weeks ago that we should have one club here, not 4 clubs. So if you have one club, then everybody owns that lot between our building and the clubhouse. So could that be used for parking in the future? Could that be designated parking lot in the future? It's a concern.
Okay, we talked to the attorney yesterday about club consolidation, because that's been on the table for a number of years. There are things that don't change when you consolidate. Each club's, even though they've been consolidated, each club has its own budget process, its own financial statements, doesn't have a board of directors. The property lines in the designation doesn't change. So I would think because of the ownership by the club or by that designated club, that doesn't change either. So it then becomes, it's not a COA problem, it's a club problem, even though there's a consolidation. And we
Why would you consolidate?
eliminates the boards of directors and consolidates into one group that represents the entire organization. Technically, most of the contracts, like the elevator contracts, are supposed to be done by club rather than pricing on a consolidated basis. We've kind of worked around that unintentionally, but landscaping, elevator contracts, even painting contracts would all be negotiated on a larger basis and economies of scale, plus time, plus the annual meetings, or the board meetings, all of that would be eliminated.
I have to tell you, this week, our staff is doing nothing but annual meetings. In fact, Jennifer can't even attend this meeting because there was a meeting at 9 o'clock?
9 o'clock.
Club 1, I think there's one at 10 o'clock. And so that's a great example. This time of year, the staff is just doing nothing but getting ready for annual meetings. And a lot of it's repetitive in the meetings.
But that, you know, and I understand that. I'm still concerned that what happens to the ownership of that lot in front of building 4, next to building 5, if in fact there's a consolidation. I mean, I think that's a major concern.
I don't think we changed I'm not an attorney, I don't think we changed the legal description and the ownership description of those parcels of land. They stay as separate entities, whether it's club or by building. And it was something that this board is committed not to do any parking on those 2 sites.
As is Club 2. We own it.
This is the kind of stuff that gets me in trouble. I'm going to share we've talked about parking on the east side of the boulevard. That has been separated out of this evaluation. We will look long-term with JR Events as to whether or not we can use property owned by the county where the landscape truck now parks. That's 75 feet. We'd like to take 200, 225 feet, but pavers in there. You have to have parallel parking, not perpendicular, and possibly provide for 10 spaces during the daytime for vendors, keep them out of the current lot. If there were some type of a vendor flow, that could be used for that. But that's not part of this project. It's a separate evaluation. This would take not years, it would take months to get through that program.
Just to add one point to your question, Leon, we first of all would have to pass that by our attorneys to get a final answer. And then I believe, if I'm not mistaken, if we were to collapse all our clubs, that's a vote. So you would have answers to those questions before we would actually vote on that. I think there was a question over here. Yes.
I have a loud voice. Thank you. Just one comment. I'm a big supporter of not advertising, though this is part of it. Architect, they've done work for me, and they're an excellent group. Thank you, Jonathan. That's a good question on building the clubhouse too, and reference to that area that we purchased. I'm building 4, Tom McCoy. Those pictures you saw, my wife took from those pictures took from our building, Jennifer business. And we bought 1992. We were away, now we're here. That's a question I think needs to be addressed either later on in the session. That space in front of us, we bought the condo, we were told, that can never be built on, that's yours, that belongs to building condominium organization 2 in the session. And your question raises the issue, could at some time later it be clarified exactly what are the rights of those buildings in condominium association 2, and what's the possibilities of that taking the set? That's been a question for 25 years. That's not necessarily pertinent to this discussion, but any one of the questions that came up someday, if that could be clarified legally, what that is, because the view of building 4 and those other buildings next to it, at least my building, is very contingent upon that whole thing. So that would be put in the notes for later on to have that clarified. The property rights and the building potential, or parking potential in that area for the future.
Just let me make sure I'm in the right orientation. Building 4 is across the street, right?
Right.
Building 2 and 3 are the one with the.
Building 5 is on this side of the road, but
So south of it. So I've not looked up all the different plat maps for the whole community. We do have them. Jennifer has those files. We can extend that. In the right of the future, the area is divided into several group plats. Again, I'm not an attorney, so I'm speaking as an architect who's worked with plats. For example, when we analyzed the parking, did the parking needs analysis for this project, the plat, the way this community was developed, included building 1, 2, 3 in the clubhouse. That was the plat, and that was the parking allocation there. In the original plat documents, there are, I'm going to forget the number that were in there, 30 some reserved parking spaces designed and located between building 2 and 3. That was part of the plat. Those are reserved spaces, or I'm not sure how to logically define them, but you told the county you could put 32 spaces there, but you didn't do it. They're banked. Could somebody, proceed and put that forward? It's on the plat. It would have to go through permitting. It would have to go through, I don't know how the condominium association relates to the plat, but whoever is a part of that plat would have to have a say in proceeding forward with that parking. But there are designs in some of the areas that you've looked at in the original platted documents that show parking. So a comment that somebody said that would always stay trees may not actually be truthful. Does that mean that it doesn't stay truthful? No, it probably will, because I from what I've heard from the opinions, everybody does not want to do that. But there is reserved parking spaces shown between building 2 and 3. South of the club, about, I think it was staked out, I'm not sure if you guys got to see it, but staked out south of the club, the property switches to the next plat. The entire project is on a parcel that is actually the clubhouse property. Our project fits entirely on that. Ironically, the property line is just north of the club. In fact, that parking lot, the parking lot north of the club, is actually on the property of unit of building 3. And south of the club, partly where we're doing a pool, was additional pervious parking in the original plat. Now I'm going back to an original plat. Those are never, life changes, things happen, they don't get done. But there is planning and plat work that shows those areas as parking, and some of it is even counted in your development order. I do not know what happened. I can pull up the plat for building 4 and look at that space, but south of the club, that switches to a different plat is a different thing that the club doesn't have any connection to this project. But that might be something, as you go forward, you might want to have your board or Jennifer pull up those plat drawings and look. I don't know if there's anything in the view corridor of building 4 on the plat maps, but that might be something we could look up or check for you.
I don't think it would be specific for it, that group.
It would be the group, and I assume group building 4 may be platted with that other group, but I'm not sure.
I refer to those as phantom parking spaces. They were used in the calculation 30 years ago. They were used in this recent calculation. Trying to get this legal definition, and we pushed yesterday trying to get a clearer understanding, not knowing the circumstances that would exist at the time that park, someone would try to do development on that. It's difficult to say. I think that the clubs would have to vote on that. The COA would have to vote on that. It's a big issue, and it's fraught with legal we haven't found any document that says your view's never gonna be impeded. However, you've had that view for 30 years for somebody to put up another building on the property. All of that just has legal issues behind it that gives you, we believe, the owners have some rights in how they deal with that. But the,
An alternate to that is, because it's in the bank as reserved parking, that means you can't do anything else with it. So there, you couldn't put a building there, because then I'd have to somehow create more phantom parking. So in a way, it is locked and put in the bank as phantom parking or green space.
I think you have to go back and say, what is the intent of your current board of directors, whether it be Club 2, 1, and the COA, according to this space? And the intent, 100%, is that nothing is going to go in that green space. Now, legally, I think, as Tom said, in the future, that could change, but the intent of your board of directors now is that that is going to remain a green space.
I talked to John probably 2 months ago now about trying to get those documents, get the elimination of the phantom spaces. Just take that off the table, redesignate that in some fashion. His comment was, because it's used in the calculation of what we have, to come up with the zero, for us to change the documents in any way, puts it at risk that the county comes in and says, okay, what's your replacement? You just can't eliminate. So you either replace the parking spaces, and I think he said, tongue in cheek, that you'd have to tear a building down because you have now too many units to support the parking you have. So it really is a serious legal consideration, and has to be looked at based on the circumstances at the time. Assuming the vote is passed in the next month, the architects would be engaged, as well as engineers now, to take the next step in developing plans and specs. We believe those can be developed probably, let's say, by the end of September. So the next several months would be a bid process, and there's a little flex in there because we wouldn't do much in season. We would start construction based on evaluation, obviously, of the bids and making sure they're in line with our cost projections. We would start construction probably early March, and the estimate from Bill, and I think Scott and John were involved with that, would be somewhere near the end of October would be completion. But someone had asked at a previous meeting about cost controls. We're building in some guidelines in the proxy preparation that indicates that a 5% overrun would be kind of the target that we would look to, where we either redesign the plans or come back to the owners for some an additional vote. We're not going to have any serious in the bid process. We think we may even hopefully come up with some lower numbers, but there is this beyond the contingency. We have a little bit of flex.
I just want to clarify something. It's my understanding now that there's ghost parking or reserve parking between building 2 and 3, correct?
Right.
32 spaces.
Right, it's big kidney shaped, no trees.
Okay.
What's the original? That's
Okay.
Yes.
What is the ghost parking in front of building 4, south of the pool?
It was something like 15 spaces.
No,
So-
in front of building 4, I don't have that.
Across the street, on our side.
I'd have to look up that plat. I don't have that with me.
Jennifer had that, and it's available in the office. I think
Okay,
it was
so we
15.
should know that. We should know what ghost parking or proposed parking might be possible in front of building 4. Because we know what's between building 2 and 3, 32 spaces. Ghost parking may never happen, but we don't know the number of parking places in front of building 4, that's south of the pool area.
That, I think it was 48 spaces in terms of reserved space. That has nothing, we really want to separate this from the project because we don't anticipate that that's going to happen.
But it could.
It could happen well down the road, but it would take all of those legal steps, including owners' rights that come into play. And I available to visit with you one-on-one to happen.
The property across across the road from Building 4, does the county own that?
Club 2 owns it.
Hmm?
Club 2 owns it.
Property across from Building 4, Club 2 owns that entire stretch of land. Where we're talking about on the east side, that small strip is owned by county, but that abuts the mangroves.
So is it possible that they might, sell it to us to use for parking?
I wouldn't try to buy that because of the mangrove situation that's there, but I do think getting their permission is very viable, and J.R. Evans thought that might be a very strong possibility of happening, but not in the very near term.
The boulevard is a 60-foot right-of-way, and I believe the road is 25 feet plus or minus wide. So there's landscape easements, sidewalks, that we could work within the right-of-way.
The road itself belongs to the association, I believe.
I believe it's a county road.
It's a county
road,
Yeah, I
but
believe.
we paid for paving it.
We do. The county owns it.
There's an
County owns it.
there's an intricate legal agreement that defines all of the rights and responsibilities, and I was we took on the responsibilities for maintenance of the road in exchange for maintaining the gatehouse, I believe. That was a dozen years ago.
Is the gatehouse an option? Having a gatehouse, is that optional, or is that part of the plan?
The gatehouse stays, thankfully has nothing to do with us.
My other question is, you've expanded the facility and added a lot of square footage make it more useful and add a lot of things. And I question whether it's gonna only take a half a person to maintain that. You have a lot more bathrooms, you have this facility, you're gonna operate more hours. Even if you try and restrict them, you talk about going to 9 o'clock, you're gonna have to have somebody there monitoring that. And I think you've understated the half person it's gonna take to do that.
Just to let you know, we are in the process at COA right now of evaluating our maintenance staff and what is required presently. So I think that is going to be addressed going forward. And I think maybe next season, you will have a better or clearer understanding of what is going to happen currently and then what we might need going forward.
The maintenance is a big.
So I think you're right about the half a person.
Yeah, that's a guesstimate. The maintenance is the key issue in terms of staffing. We don't monitor the pool now. That's part of what we get with our security, where they come in. So if the hours were extended, granted, there are more restrooms, there's more cleanup to do. That has to be seen as to what's necessary.
Jennifer is doing a really in-depth evaluation of that.
I have a question about the right-of-way. You said it's 60 feet, which we're using 20. Where is the 40 feet relationship to the 20 feet that we're using? Is it on the east, the west, or both?
Generally centered, but meandering. It's not consistent down the whole boulevard.
What I'm wondering, in the particular area where Tom was referring to the parallel parking, if you have 20 feet or more to the east, couldn't you put head-in parking there?
The county generally dislikes backup parking onto a county road, especially one of that speed. But probably you're almost there in size. A parking space is 18 feet. So really, the more difficult question would be, and I don't have all this documentation, is what is in the right of way? Is there sewer? Is there, what's underground that we don't see? We can see the sidewalks, the landscaping buffers, but there's probably a lot of other stuff in there. And so we'd really need to go to the county, work with them to activate it. And again, that's a right-of-way permit. And I know your community has lots of history with the county and the road and whose it is and who maintains it. So there's probably a larger discussion to get that. But that would be a potential area where you could create, widen the street with parallel parking and accommodate either maintenance vehicles. For example, I know the Port Royal Association down in Naples is trying to pass a rule. They're going through the motions to eliminate on-street parking of any lawn maintenance trucks. There's 600 properties in there, and you can imagine what it's like to drive around. But that means, the lawn truck has to park in your driveway. You don't have that option. I can only imagine how many service vehicles you have.
Let me insert one thing and then we'll have one last question. Terry handed me a note that insurance savings, I mentioned 594,000. I think the memo came out with the big 464,000. My understanding was that that's a de-annualized number based on the remaining term on the insurance policy. I thought that Dave Sumner originally said it was close to the 600,000.
That's because it was May 1 that they thought that the effective date would happen. And then they came back and said, no, it's actually July 1. So that's just a portion from May 1 to July 1 for this year. We will actually get checks for those amount of money. That's the important thing. Going forward, then that calculation of what the savings will be will depend on what the then current rates are going to be. So we can't project the future. That will be actual money in our hands.
Okay, one last question.
Yes, Shirley Hedlinger from Building 4, Club 2. I have great trepidation about the language that's being used regarding the land in front of our building. As Tom McCoy said, I guess, is there any way we can get some type of legal assessment of what will really happen with that property? I mean, that's a great concern to anybody that lives in Building 4, and of course the end properties on Building 5 that will face down on that land. So if there's any way that we can get some legal, because everybody keeps beating around that maybe, but nobody has anything or can say anything regarding the legality, and that's the only true thing in real estate because anything else is not valid. So that's my big concern about putting anything, the pool there, not the pool per se, but what might happen after the pool regarding parking and other types of things. Go on.
The only reason I don't mean to seem like I'm dodging that part about Building 4 is I just have not studied the plat, so I don't have that document because, again, this project, the plat encompassed the club and buildings 1, 2, and 3. Jennifer has those documents. We can pull up that plat and look if there's any kind of reserve parking or anything shown on there. But again, any parking lot, I would assume needs a substantial improvement and would mandate the vote of whatever club or building that property is. So I don't think there's any desire of the membership to vote in favor of any parking lots near those buildings or those preserves.
Let me repeat, that is owned by Club 2. And we will take the responsibility of Club 2 of going through all those things that you have just said. But at the end of the day, Club 2 still has the final say on what goes there or doesn't go there. So I think let's rest with the Club 2 board.
Buying all of the clubs and then,
as we said, that will be vetted out if that happens, of who owns the thing. But right now it's Club 2. Right now it's Club 2.
Club 2 does not disappear when you consolidate clubs. You come under a different set of rules at the COA, but you still, as a club, we believe, own the property. One of the issues when we get into trying to get legal definition, we have one attorney say that it's a material alteration. We have another one that says it isn't, which requires a vote. And the one we're working with says, I'm not going to give you an opinion because that takes a study in determining what you're going to do or trying to do, and then we'll get into what the legal determination would be. And that's why I'm saying the owners have more rights than what appears in this particular project. That goes beyond what we're dealing with.